You know what they say about family. Blood is thicker than water. But what happens when that same blood turns cold, and the people who are supposed to love you most become the ones who hurt you deepest? My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how my own family tried to destroy me, thinking I was weak and defenseless. They had no idea what I was truly capable of. And by the time they found out, it was already too late. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been the scapegoat, the one they blame for everything, then you need to hear this story. Because sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous. Sometimes the person everyone underestimates becomes the one who changes everything. Hit that like button if you're ready for a story of justice, revenge, and the sweetest kind of victory. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. It all started on a rainy Tuesday in March, when I received a text message that would change my life forever. The text was from my mother, Linda, short, cold, and straight to the point. Don't come to Easter dinner. We need space from your drama. I stared at my phone screen for a full 5 minutes, reading those words over and over again. My drama? What drama was she talking about? See, I'm the middle child in the Patterson family. My older brother, Marcus, is the golden boy successful. Lawyer, married to his college sweetheart, Jessica. 2 perfect kids. And a house in the suburbs that looks like it jumped straight out of a magazine. My younger sister, Emma, is the baby. The creative one. The one who can do no wrong in my parents' eyes, even though she's 28 and still living in their basement, spending their money on art supplies and finding herself. And then there's Emmy, 32-year-old Sarah, the invisible one. The one who never quite measured up, never quite fit in, never quite good enough. For years, I've been the family mediator. When Marcus and Emma fought, I was the one who smoothed things over. When Mom and Dad had their screaming matches about money, I was the one who listened to both sides and helped them work it out. When anyone in the family had a crisis, guess who they called? But apparently, being helpful made me dramatic. I tried. Calling Mom back, straight to voicemail. I called Dad. Same thing. Marcus wouldn't pick up, and Emma ... Well, Emma had blocked my number months ago after I politely asked her to pay back the $3,000 she borrowed for her emergency art exhibition. The silence from my family wasn't just hurtful. It was devastating. Because I'd spent my entire adult life being there for them, supporting them, helping them, and this was how they repaid me. But that text message? That was just the beginning. 3 days later, I found out the real reason they cut me off. And it had nothing to do with drama. I found out the truth through Facebook, of all places. A friend had tagged me in a photo from Marcus's Easter dinner. The Easter dinner I've been banned from attending. There they all were. Mom, Dad, Marcus, Jessica, their kids, Emma, and about 15 other relatives I recognized. They were all smiling, laughing, having a wonderful time at the family gathering. I wasn't allowed to attend. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the woman sitting right next to my mother, in the chair that used to be mine. A woman with perfectly styled blonde hair, designer clothes, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her name was Victoria Hartwell, and 3 months earlier, she'd become my ex-boss after she fired me from the marketing firm where I'd worked for. 6 years. Now, you might be thinking this is just a coincidence. Maybe Victoria happened to know my family through some other connection. Maybe this was all innocent, but as I scrolled through the comments on that photo, my blood ran cold. So wonderful to meet Marcus's family. Thank you for welcoming me with open arms, Linda. Can't wait for our girls' trip next month, Emma. Jim, love hearing about your golf game. Let's play 18 holes soon. Victoria wasn't just at my family's Easter dinner as a guest. She was being welcomed into my family, the family that had just kicked me out. I needed answers. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I drove to my parents' house for a confrontation. Mom answered the door with that fake smile she reserves for people she doesn't want to deal with. Sarah, honey, what are you doing here? I want to know why Victoria Hartwell was at our family Easter dinner. The smile disappeared. I don't know what you're talking about. Mom, I saw the photos. She was sitting in my chair. Dad appeared behind her, looking uncomfortable. Sarah, maybe you should come in. We sat in the living room where I'd grown up, where I'd celebrated every Christmas morning, where I brought home every report card and shared every milestone. Now it felt like enemy territory. Victoria reached out to us a few months ago. Dad began. She was concerned about you. Concerned about me? She told us about your behavior at work, Mom said, her voice taking on that disappointed tone I knew so well. The lying, the stealing, the harassment of coworkers. My mouth fell open. What are you talking about? Victoria fired me because I refused to falsify client reports. I was about to blow the whistle on the company's illegal practices. That's not what she told us, Mom said firmly. She showed us documentation, Sarah, emails you sent, complaints from other employees. She was trying to help you, and you made her life hell. I felt the room spinning. You believed her over me? Your own daughter? She had proof, Dad said quietly. And honestly, Sarah, it explained a lot. Your attitude lately, your negativity, the way you've been stirring up drama in the family. What drama? What are you even talking about? The way you've been trying to turn Emma and Marcus against us, Mom said. The lies you've been spreading about our finances, about our marriage. I sat there in stunned silence. I had never done any of those things. The drama they were talking about was me asking Emma to pay back money she owed, and expressing concern when I noticed Mom and Dad arguing more than usual about their retirement funds. But somehow, Victoria had twisted everything. She painted me as a liar, a thief, a troublemaker. And my family had believed her without question. So that's it. I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You're replacing me with the woman who destroyed my career? We're not replacing you, Dad said. But we need some space while you work through your issues. My issues? Victoria recommended a therapist, Mom added helpfully. Someone who specializes in personality disorders. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. I can't believe this. We love you, Sarah, Mom said. But we can't enable your destructive behavior anymore. I walked to the door in a daze. As I was leaving, I heard Dad call out, when you're ready to get help, and apologize to Victoria for what you put her through. We'll be here. I drove home in silence, my mind racing. My family had chosen to believe a stranger over their own daughter. They'd welcomed my abuser into their home and kicked me out of mine. But as I sat in my apartment that night, something shifted inside. The hurt began to transform into something else. Something harder, sharper, more focused. They thought I was weak. They thought I was the problem. They thought Victoria Hartwell was the victim. They had no idea who they were dealing with. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you, you know that moment when the sadness turns to steel. When you stop crying and start planning. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will shock you. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation with my parents, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong so fast. But by morning, I'd made a decision. If my family wanted proof that I wasn't the person Victoria claimed I was, I'd give them proof. But more than that, I was going to find out exactly who Victoria Hartwell really was. I started with the basics. Social media, public records, professional networking sites. On the surface, Victoria looked perfect. MBA from Northwestern. 15. Years of marketing experience, glowing recommendations from previous employers. But I'd learned something during my 6 years in marketing research. The surface is usually where people hide the most interesting information. I dug deeper. The first red flag came when I called her previous employer, a marketing firm in Chicago. When I identified myself as someone doing a background check, the HR representative got very quiet. I'm sorry, but we don't provide references for Ms. Hartwell, she said carefully. Is there a particular reason why? A long pause. I'm not authorized to discuss personnel matters, but I will say that anyone considering hiring Ms. Hartwell should do very thorough due diligence. Interesting. The second red flag came from a private investigator forum I'd found online. Marketing research had taught me how to navigate the darker corners of the internet, and I knew how to ask the right questions in the right places. I posted a simple query, looking for information about Victoria Hartwell, formerly of Chicago, currently in Denver. Anyone have dealings with her? Within 6 hours, I had 3 private messages. The first was from a former coworker. Run. That woman destroyed my career and nearly broke up my marriage. She's a sociopath. The second was from someone claiming to be her former neighbor. She was evicted for harassment. Made the lives of everyone in our building hell. Filed false complaints, spread lies, tried to get people fired from their jobs. The third message made my blood run cold. She did the same thing to my family that she's doing to yours. Isolated me from everyone I love by spreading lies. It took me 3 years to rebuild those relationships. Be careful. I spent the next week diving deeper into Victoria's past, and what I found was a pattern that made me sick to my stomach. In Chicago, she'd been fired from her job for falsifying client reports, the exact thing she'd accused me of. She'd also been involved in a harassment lawsuit with her former landlord, a restraining order filed by an ex-boyfriend, and at least 3 other workplace complaints. But Victoria was smart. She knew how to cover her tracks, how to move on before the consequences caught up with her, how to reinvent herself in each new city. And now she was doing to me what she'd done to countless others. But this time, she'd made a mistake. She'd targeted someone who had the skills to fight back. I gathered every piece of evidence I could find. Police reports, court documents, former employer statements, social media posts from people she'd wronged. I built a case against Victoria Hartwell that would make any prosecutor proud. But I didn't stop there, because while I was investigating Victoria, I discovered something else. Something that would change everything. Remember how my parents had mentioned being concerned about their retirement funds? How they've been arguing about money more than usual? Well, it turns out there was a very good reason for that. What I discovered about my parents. Finances made my stomach drop. 3 months ago, right around the time Victoria reached out to them with concerns about me, my parents had made some very unusual financial decisions. They'd taken out a second mortgage on their house. They'd liquidated their retirement accounts early, paying massive penalties. They'd even cashed in the life insurance policy my grandmother had left them. All told, they'd moved nearly $400,000 in liquid assets. But where had it gone? The paper trail was deliberately complicated, but I learned how to trace money during my marketing career. Shell companies, offshore accounts, investment funds that existed only on paper. It was a sophisticated operation, and at the end of the trail was a name I recognize: Hartwell Financial Consulting. Victoria hadn't just infiltrated my family to destroy my reputation. She'd done it to rob them blind. I sat in my apartment, staring at the financial documents I'd managed to track down, feeling sick. My parents, difficult as they were, didn't deserve this. No one deserved this. But I also felt something else: vindication. Because Victoria had just handed me the weapon, I needed to destroy her completely. The question was, how to use it. I could go to the police with what I'd found. But financial crimes are notoriously difficult to prosecute, especially when the victims don't even realize they've been victimized. Victoria was smart enough to have covered her legal bases, at least initially. I could go to my parents directly. But they were so thoroughly convinced that I was the problem and Victoria was the solution that they'd probably assume I was making the whole thing up. No. This required a more subtle approach. I needed to expose Victoria in a way that would be undeniable, public, and devastating. I needed to destroy her credibility so completely that no one would ever trust her again. And I needed to do it in front of my entire family. Lucky for me, I knew exactly when that opportunity would present itself. You see, my family has this tradition. Every year on the first Saturday in May, we have what we call Patterson Family Day. It's a big barbecue where we invite all the relatives, family, friends, and anyone else my parents want to show off to. This year's invitation, which I received before being cut off, was particularly interesting because according to the Facebook event page, I could still see Victoria was listed as a special guest who will be sharing some exciting news with the Patterson family. I had a pretty good idea what that exciting news was going to be. Victoria was going to announce her engagement to some fictional man, or her promotion to some important position, or maybe even her plans to start a charity for helping troubled family members. Whatever it was, she was planning to cement her position as the family's new golden child at the same event, where she probably announced her plans to help my parents invest even more of their money. But I was going to turn her moment of triumph into her moment of destruction. And the beautiful thing was, she was going to do most of the work for me. Planning Victoria's downfall required patience, precision, and a level of strategic thinking that my marketing background had taught me well. I had 3 weeks to prepare, and I intended to use every single day. First, I needed allies, people who would be at the family barbecue and could help me when the moment came. I started with my cousin Jake, Marcus's best friend since childhood. Jake had always been the black sheep of the family himself, so he understood what it felt like to be on the outside. More importantly, he was a cybersecurity specialist who knew how to handle sensitive digital evidence. When I showed him what I'd found about Victoria, his reaction was immediate and intense. "Sarah, this woman is a predator," he said, scrolling through the documents I compiled. "She systematically targeted your family's vulnerabilities and exploited them." "I know. The question is, how do we expose her?" Jake was quiet for a long moment, thinking, we need to catch her in the act. If we can get her to admit what she's doing, on record, in front of witnesses, then even your parents won't be able to deny it. That gave me an idea. The second part of my plan involved my former colleague, David Ching. David had been my closest friend at the marketing firm, and he quit 2 weeks after Victoria fired me, disgusted by what he witnessed. David had something I needed: access to Victoria's professional history that wasn't available through public records. "I kept copies of everything," he told me when I explained what I was planning. Her fraudulent reports, the emails where she threatened other employees, the client complaints she tried to cover up. I've been waiting for someone to take her down. "Why? Didn't you report her yourself?" "I tried. But she'd already poisoned the well against anyone who supported you. HR wouldn't listen to me either." David's evidence was damning, but I needed more than just professional misconduct. I needed to prove that Victoria had specifically targeted and manipulated my family. That's where the third part of my plan came in. I knew Victoria well enough from working with her to understand her biggest weakness, her ego. She couldn't resist bragging about her victories, especially when she thought she was safe from consequences. So I was going to give her the perfect opportunity to confess everything. I created a fake social media profile under the name Rebecca Morrison, supposedly a marketing executive from Seattle who was looking for networking opportunities in Denver. The profile was sophisticated enough to pass casual inspection, complete with professional photos purchased from a stock photo site, fake but plausible work history, and connections to real people in the marketing industry. Over the course of 2 weeks, Rebecca began following Victoria's social media, liking her posts, and gradually building a relationship. I used everything I knew about Victoria's personality to craft messages that would appeal to her vanity and make her feel safe. The breakthrough came when Rebecca mentioned that she was dealing with a difficult family situation and was impressed by how Victoria seemed to have everything figured out. Victoria took the bait immediately. She began messaging Rebecca privately, offering advice about handling toxic family members and protecting yourself from negative people. She even suggested they meet for coffee to discuss strategies for dealing with manipulative relatives. But the real gold mine was when Rebecca mentioned that she was having trouble with her parents' financial decisions and was worried they were being taken advantage of. Victoria's response was everything I'd hoped for and more. "Oh, honey, you're so right to be concerned. I've actually helped several families navigate these exact situations. Sometimes adult children think they know what's best, but they're actually being incredibly selfish and destructive. I've found that the best approach is to help the parents see the truth about their toxic children's behavior, then provide them with better investment opportunities. I'm actually working with a family right now where the daughter was stealing from her parents and spreading lies about everyone. Once I showed them the truth, they were so grateful. They've already invested over $300,000 with my consulting firm, and we're looking at expanding that to include their entire retirement portfolio." I read that message 3 times, my hands shaking. Victoria had just confessed to manipulating families, stealing money, and specifically targeting parents against their children, but she wasn't done. The best part is, once you eliminate the toxic family member, the rest of the family becomes so much closer. I'm actually going to their big family barbecue next weekend as an honored guest. They're going to announce their decision to make me their financial advisor in front of everyone. It's going to be so satisfying to see how far I've come. I had her, but I wasn't just going to use this evidence to destroy Victoria. I was going to use it to save my family and show them exactly who they welcomed into their home. The barbecue was in 4 days. It was time to spring the trap. Comment below if you've ever had to expose someone who is manipulating your family. Because what happens next is going to be the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen. Saturday, May 4th, Patterson Family Day, I arrive at my parents' house 2 hours before the official start time. I knew they'd be busy with last-minute preparations and might not notice one extra car in the driveway until it was too late. I parked around the corner and walked up to the backyard through the side gate, a route I'd taken countless times as a kid. The familiarity of it almost broke my heart, but I pushed those feelings aside. Today wasn't about nostalgia. Today was about justice. Jake was already there, having arrived with Marcus's family as he always did. He spotted me immediately and gave an almost imperceptible nod. David was positioned across the street in his car, monitoring the digital evidence. We planned it and ready to provide technical support if needed. The first person to see me was Emma. She was arranging flowers on the patio table when she looked up and froze. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" I came to see my family. But Mom said, I know what Mom said. But I have some things to share with everyone today. Important things. Before Emma could respond, Marcus appeared with a beer in his hand. His expression immediately darkened when he saw me. "Sarah, you need to leave. Now. Actually, I think I need to stay. Especially since Victoria's going to be here. Victoria's been nothing but kind to this family. She's helped Mom and Dad more than you ever have." "Has she, Marcus? Has she really?" Something in my tone must have gotten through to him, because he paused. For just a moment, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. "What's that supposed to mean?" Before I could answer, Gad came out of the house carrying a tray of hamburger patties. He saw me and nearly dropped them. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "I'm here for the family barbecue, Dad. You know, the one where Victoria's going to make her big announcement." "You weren't invited," Mom said, appearing beside him. "We talked about this. You need to work on yourself before you can be part of this family again." "Actually, Mom, I think there are some things about this family that you don't know. Things about Victoria that you need to hear. We're not interested in more of your lies," Dad said firmly. "What if they're not lies?" The voice came from behind. "Emmy." I turned to see Cousin Jake walking over, his phone in his hand. "Jake, stay out of this," Marcus warned. "I can't stay out of this, Marcus. Not when I've seen what Sarah's uncovered." "Uncovered?" Mom's voice was sharp. "What are you talking about?" Jake looked at me and I nodded. It was time. "Victoria Hartwell isn't who she claims to be," Jake said, his voice carrying clearly across the patio. "She's a con artist who's been systematically targeting families like ours. And Sarah has proof. The entire family had gathered now. Emma, Marcus, Jessica, their kids, several aunts and uncles, family friends. Even the neighbors were starting to look over. Perfect. That's ridiculous. Dad said. Victoria showed us documentation about Sarah's behavior. She has credentials, references, fake ones, I said, pulling out my own phone. Dad, 3 months ago, you and Mom had nearly $400,000 in retirement savings. Where? Is that money now? The color drained from Dad's face. That's none of your business. It became my business when Victoria convinced you to invest it with her fake consulting firm. It's not fake. Mom protested, but there was uncertainty in her voice now. Mom, Hartwell Financial Consulting doesn't exist outside of a website Victoria. Created 3 weeks ago. The business license is fraudulent. The address is a UPS store. The testimonials are from stock photo models. I pulled up the evidence on my phone, showing them screenshot after screenshot. Fake business registrations. Phony testimonials, the trail of shell companies that led back to Victoria's personal accounts. This is impossible, Marcus said, but he was looking at the evidence now, his legal training kicking in. These documents. How did you get these? I did what Victoria never expected anyone to do. I investigated her. That's when I heard the sound of a car door slamming in the driveway. Victoria had arrived. Sarah, Mom whispered, if this is true, ... It's true, Mom, but there's more. Victoria didn't just steal your money. She deliberately destroyed my relationship with this family to cover her tracks. I played the recorded confession from Rebecca's conversation with Victoria. The entire family listened in stunned silence as Victoria's voice filled the backyard, bragging about manipulating families, stealing money, and specifically targeting me for isolation. The best part is, once you eliminate the toxic family member, the rest of the family becomes so much closer ... By the time the recording finished, Mom was crying and Dad looked like he was going to be sick. She played us, Emma whispered. She played all of us. That's when Victoria rounded the corner into the backyard, carrying a bottle of expensive wine and wearing a smile that faltered the moment she saw me. Sarah, what are you doing here? The entire family turned to look at her. 30 people, all staring at the woman who had just been exposed as a fraud and a thief. Hello, Victoria, I said calmly. I was just sharing some interesting information about your consulting business. Victoria's eyes darted around the group, quickly assessing the situation. She was smart enough to know that something had gone very wrong, but she tried to maintain her composure. Jim, Linda, I'm not sure what Sarah has been telling you, but we heard enough, Dad said, his voice cold. We heard your confession. Victoria's face went white. My what? I held up my phone, showing her the conversation she'd had with Rebecca. Morrison. You remember Rebecca, don't you? The marketing executive from Seattle you've been bragging to about stealing from my family? Victoria's mask finally slipped completely. The charming, sympathetic woman my family had welcomed into their home was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. You have no idea what you've done, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Actually, I know exactly what I've done. I've stopped you from stealing from my family. I've exposed you as a fraud, and I've shown everyone here who you really are. Victoria looked around the circle of faces, all watching her with a mixture of anger and disgust. She must have realized that her game was over, because her expression shifted one more time to pure rage. Fine, she snarled. You want the truth? Your family was pathetically easy to manipulate. They were so desperate to believe that their precious daughter was the problem that they handed me their life savings without question. The collective gasp from my relatives was audible. You're all weak, gullible people who deserve to be taken advantage of. And you, she pointed at me, you were supposed to disappear quietly. You were supposed to just accept being cut off and go away. But I didn't, I said simply. I fought back. Victoria's laugh was bitter. You think this is over? You think exposing me here changes anything? I've already moved most of their money offshore. You'll never get it back. That's when Marcus stepped forward, and I remember why he becomes such a successful lawyer. Actually, Victoria, that's where you're wrong. See, my cousin Jake here? He's been recording this entire conversation. And under Colorado law, admitting to financial fraud in front of witnesses is more than enough to get the FBI involved. Victoria's eyes widen. You can't prove anything. We can prove everything, Jake said, holding up his phone. Financial. Records, fake business documents, recorded confessions, and now your admission of guilt in front of 30 witnesses. That's when Victoria finally broke. She screamed. Actually screamed, a sound of pure rage and frustration that echoed across the entire neighborhood. Then she threw the wine bottle she'd been holding directly at my head. I ducked, and the bottle shattered against the side of the house. You ruined everything, she shrieked. Everything. Dad stepped between us, his protective instincts finally kicking in. Get off my property, now. This isn't over, Victoria snarled as she backed toward the gate. I'll destroy all of you. Good luck with that from federal prison. Marcus called after her. We watched her leave, then stood in stunned silence for several long moments. Finally, Mom broke the quiet. Sarah, she whispered, I'm so sorry. The next few hours were a blur of police reports, FBI phone calls, and family conversations that were long overdue. It turned out that most of my parents' money was recoverable. Victoria had been planning to transfer it offshore gradually over the next few months, but she hadn't completed the process yet. The FBI was able to freeze her accounts and recover nearly $300,000, but the financial recovery was nothing compared to the emotional healing that began that day. I can't believe we believed her over you, Mom said, sitting beside me on the porch swing where I'd spent countless childhood afternoons. I'm ashamed of myself. She was very convincing, I said. That's what made her dangerous. It's not just that she was convincing, Dad said, joining us with 3 cups of coffee. It's that we wanted to believe her. What do you mean? Dad sat heavily in his chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Victoria told us things about you that confirmed our worst fears about ourselves. I don't understand. She said you were angry at us for not supporting your career more, Mom explained. She said you resented us for favoring Marcus and Emma. She said you thought we were bad parents. I felt my throat tighten, and you believed that because part of us worried it might be true, Dad said quietly. We knew we hadn't always been fair to you. You were always the easy one, the responsible one, the one who didn't need as much attention. So we gave our attention to Marcus and Emma instead. We convinced ourselves that you were fine without us, Mom added, that you were strong enough to handle being overlooked. But when Victoria suggested that you were actually angry about it, we panicked, Dad continued. Instead of talking to you directly, we assumed the worst. We let our guilt make us defensive. I sat there processing this revelation. My parents hadn't believed Victoria because they thought I was a terrible person. They believed her because they thought they were terrible parents. You weren't terrible parents, I said finally. You weren't perfect, but you weren't terrible. We failed you, Mom said, tears in her eyes. When you needed us most, we chose to believe a stranger over our own daughter. You made a mistake, but you're here now. We talked until sunset that day. Really talked, for the first time in years. About old hurts and misunderstandings, about expectations and disappointments, about love that had been expressed poorly but had always been real. Marcus and Emma joined us eventually. And we had the family conversation we should have had years ago. I always thought you were perfect, Emma admitted. You had your life together, your career, your independence. I felt like such a failure compared to you. I thought Mom and Dad loved you more because you never caused problems, Marcus said. I was jealous of how easy things seemed for you. It was amazing how much pain we'd all been carrying. How many assumptions we've made about each other without ever actually talking. Victoria saw all of this, I realized. She saw our weak spots and exploited them perfectly. She turned our love for each other into a weapon against us, Dad said. But you turned it back into a strength. Victoria's arrest made the local news. Marketing executive charged with multi-state financial fraud scheme. The story revealed that she'd been running the same con in 3 different cities over the past 5 years, targeting middle-class families and stealing over $2 million total. I testified at her trial 6 months later. The prosecution had built an airtight case, but my evidence, the recorded confession, the financial trail, the documentation of her history, was what sealed her fate. Victoria was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution to all her victims. But the real justice wasn't in her punishment. It was in what happened to my family afterward. The crisis had forced us to confront issues we've been avoiding for years. We started having regular family dinners, real conversations, honest discussions about our feelings and expectations. Mom and Dad began couples therapy to work on their communication issues. Emma moved out of their basement and into her own apartment, finally taking responsibility for her financial independence. Marcus made an effort to include me in family decisions. Instead of just assuming I'd go along with whatever he wanted. And me? I started my own marketing consulting firm, specializing in helping families and small businesses protect themselves from financial predators. Turns out, my experience with Victoria had given me expertise that was in high demand. The business was so successful that I was able to help my parents recover the money they'd lost to penalties and fees during Victoria's scam. I also set up college funds for Marcus's kids and helped Emma start her art business on solid financial footing. 1 year after Victoria's arrest, we had our first Patterson family day since the confrontation. But this time, it was different. This time, we were celebrating not just our survival, but our growth. You saved us, Mom said, watching Emma show her art to interested relatives while Marcus grilled burgers with Dad. You saved our family. We saved each other, I corrected. Victoria couldn't have succeeded if we'd been communicating honestly in the first place. Still, Dad said, joining our conversation, you're the one who fought back. You're the one who refused to just disappear. I learned something important, I said. Sometimes the people who love you most are the easiest to turn against you. But that same love is also what brings you back together. Victoria's case opened floodgates I never expected. After the trial, I started receiving calls from people across the country who had similar experiences with financial predators targeting families. I helped a woman in Texas whose financial advisor had convinced her children that she was developing dementia so they'd give him power of attorney. I worked with a family in Oregon whose daughter's boyfriend had systematically isolated her from her relatives while draining her inheritance. Each case was different, but the pattern was always the same. Find the weak spots in family relationships, exploit those vulnerabilities, and use the family's love against them. I started speaking at conferences about financial predators and family manipulation. I wrote articles for financial magazines about warning signs to watch for. I even consulted with the FBI on similar cases. But the most rewarding part was the families I was able to help before the damage was done, like the Johnson family in Milwaukee, who contacted me when they suspected their elderly father's new caregiver was isolating him from his children. We were able to expose her scheme before she could access his accounts, and the family learned to communicate more openly about their concerns. Or the Martinez family in Phoenix, whose adult son's new girlfriend was trying to convince him that his parents were controlling and toxic. By showing them the warning signs and helping them have honest conversations, we prevented what could have been years of family destruction. The work was emotionally draining, but incredibly fulfilling. I was turning my worst experience into something that could protect other families from the same pain. But perhaps the most unexpected outcome was what happened with my own family relationships. Emma's art business flourished once she had proper financial planning, and emotional support. Her first gallery showing sold out, and she was featured in several art magazines. More importantly, she was finally confident and independent. Marcus and I became closer than we'd ever been. He started referring legal clients to my consulting firm, and I helped him understand the financial aspects of cases involving elder abuse and family fraud. We even started having lunch together every week, something we'd never done as adults. Thought Mom and Dad's marriage strengthened significantly after they learned to communicate more openly. They renewed their vows on their 35th wedding anniversary, and Dad's speech brought tears to everyone's eyes. 35 years ago, I married my best friend, he said. But it took almost losing everything to remember how to be best friends again. Sarah showed us that families are strongest when they face problems together, not when they hide from them. But the most meaningful change was in how our family handled conflict. When Emma and Marcus had a disagreement about wedding planning, Emma was getting married to a wonderful artist she'd met at her gallery. Instead of letting it fester or having me mediate, they sat down and talked it through themselves. When Mom and Dad were stressed about retirement planning, they came to all of us for input instead of trying to handle it alone. When I was overwhelmed with work and started canceling family dinners, they staged an intervention, not an angry confrontation, but a loving conversation about balance and priorities. We'd learned that communication isn't just about sharing good news. It's about being vulnerable enough to share fears, disappointments, and concerns before they become crises. 2 years after Victoria's conviction, Emma got married in my parents' backyard, the same space where Victoria had been exposed, and our family had been saved on. It was a small ceremony, just immediate family and close friends. Emma had insisted that I be her maid of honor, a gesture that still brings tears to my eyes. "You taught me what real strength looks like," she said as I helped her with her dress. "You showed me that fighting for your family doesn't mean fighting with your family." The ceremony was beautiful, but what made it perfect was watching my parents during the vows. They held hands throughout the entire service, whispering comments to each other and sharing secret smiles. They looked like newlyweds themselves. Marcus's speech as best man, Emma had insisted on having her brother fill that role too, was particularly moving. "Marriage is about partnership," he said, "but family is about partnership too." We learned that lesson the hard way, but we learned it completely. Emma and David, you're not just promising to support each other through good times and bad. You're joining a family that knows how to support each other through anything. After the ceremony, during the reception, Dad pulled me aside. "I have something for you," he said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a deed to the house. "Dad, what is this?" "Your mother and I have been talking. This house has been in the Patterson family for 3 generations. It should stay in the Patterson family. But you live here. We're thinking about downsizing anyway, getting one of those retirement condos near the lake. This place is too big for us now, but it would be perfect for someone who wants to raise a family here someday." I looked around the backyard where I'd grown up, where I'd celebrated countless birthdays and holidays, where I'd faced down Victoria Hartwell and saved my family. "Dad, I can't accept this." "Yes, you can. You earned it. You're the one who kept this family together when it mattered most." I hugged him tightly, overwhelmed by the gesture and what it represented. This wasn't just a house. It was proof that I belonged here, that I was valued, that I was home. But the best moment of the day came during the father-daughter dance. Dad and Emma swayed to "The Way You Look Tonight" while the rest of us watched from the sidelines. "She looks happy," Mom said, taking my hand. "She looks free," I corrected. "She looks like herself." "We all do," Mom replied. "Thanks to you." As I watched my sister dance with our father, surrounded by family and friends who loved and supported her, I realized that this was what victory really looked like. Not the destruction of an enemy, but the restoration of love. If you've stayed with this story until now, I want you to remember something important. Families aren't perfect, and people make mistakes. But real love, the kind that survives betrayal and grows stronger through crisis, that's worth fighting for. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if this story moved you, because there are so many families out there who need to hear this message. Sometimes the person everyone underestimates becomes the one who saves everyone. I'm writing this from my home office, the room that used to be my childhood bedroom in the house where I grew up, the same house where Victoria Hartwell fought. She had destroyed my family forever. Outside my window, I can see Mom's garden, where she's teaching my 3-year-old nephew how to plant tomatoes. Dad is in the garage working on a rocking chair he's building for Emma's first baby, due next month. Marcus and Jessica live 2 streets over now. Emma and David bought a house 3 blocks away. We have family dinner every Sunday, and no one misses it unless there's a genuine emergency. My consulting business has grown beyond anything I imagined. I have a team of 12 employees, and we've helped over 300 families protect themselves from financial predators. I've written a book about family manipulation tactics that became a bestseller. I speak at conferences around the world, but the most rewarding part of my work is still the families we save. Last month, I helped a family in Seattle whose adult daughter's new boyfriend was trying to isolate her from her parents. The warning signs were textbook. He criticized her family constantly, invented emergencies that required them to miss family events, and gradually convinced her that her parents were toxic and controlling. But because the parents recognized the pattern and reached out for help early, we were able to intervention before lasting damage was done. The daughter is back in contact with her family. The boyfriend is out of the picture, and they're all stronger for having faced the crisis together. That's what I've learned over these 5 years. Predators like Victoria target families not because those families are weak, but because the bonds between family members are so strong that they can be weaponized. The same love that makes you vulnerable to manipulation is the same love that can save you when you learn to communicate honestly and support each other unconditionally. Victoria Hartwell was released from prison 8 months ago. I know because the FBI keeps me informed about her movements as part of the victim notification program. She's living in a halfway house in Denver, working at a call center, and struggling to rebuild her life with a federal fraud conviction on her record. Sometimes I wonder if she thinks about our family, about the life she tried to destroy, about how completely her plan backfired. But mostly, I don't think about her at all anymore, because here's what I've learned. The best revenge isn't destroying your enemy. The best revenge is building a life so good, so strong, so full of love and purpose that your enemy becomes irrelevant. Victoria thought she had identified the weak link in our family chain. She thought I was the easy target, the one who could be discarded without consequence. She was wrong. I wasn't the weak link. I was the steel that held everything together when it mattered most. And now, 5 years later, as I watch my nephew learn the garden and my father build furniture for his grandchildren, as I help families across the country protect themselves from predators, as I live in the house where 4 generations of Pattersons have built their lives, I know something Victoria will never understand. Family isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up for each other when everything falls apart. And we showed up. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own family's strength, if it gave you hope that broken relationships can be healed, please share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And remember, sometimes the person everyone underestimates becomes the one who saves everyone. Sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous. Sometimes the greatest victory is not in defeating your enemy, but in protecting the people you love. Hit that like button if this story moved you. Subscribe for more stories of families who found their way back to each other. And share this video with anyone who needs to remember that love is worth fighting for. Because in the end, that's what this story is really about. Love is always worth fighting for.